Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host,
Brett
Gilliland.
Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisory.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I am your host, Brett Gilliland, and today we've got Aaron Marcum with us. Aaron, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. I appreciate the invite and the opportunity.
Absolutely. How's the beautiful state of Idaho going today?
It's beautiful, a little overcast, a little bit of snow,
Okay.
but it's a beautiful state. Great views.
It's
Got
amazing.
Got the Snake
your
River out my
view's
window
probably
here.
a little different than mine. I'm looking at some trees. But, I can see a car dealership. I can see a little bit of a doctor's office, a church, a hospital. Some great stuff. And you got what do you got over there? I guess it'd be your left. What are you looking at?
My left, I am looking at the Snake River. My property backs the Snake River, and then on a clear day, I can see the Teton Mountain Range. Out there by Jackson Hole. So
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I almost had to take my vest off today. It's getting hot here. It's 60, 62 degrees. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, not experiencing that right now. So.
I got the heat. You got the mountains, right? So
That's right.
Well, you are an entrepreneur, and you've got a new book coming out next week, right? The Entre Thrive, which is awesome. You founded and scaled several multi-million-dollar businesses. In 2015, you reached financial success, but was burned out and struggling to find sustainable happiness. So that's exciting to talk about that. Now it's what you spend a lot of your time doing, right? Is helping people do that. And I call it the entrepreneur grind, the journey, whatever we want to call it. You call it the thrive, the Entre Thrive. So that's what we'll chat about today.
That's the plus side of it, right?
That's the plus side. That's right. So if you can, though, Aaron, give us a little background of what's made you the man you are today. You don't just wake up and do all this stuff.
No. So, I've been in the healthcare in-home care space for 22 years as an entrepreneur. My first company, 2002, started a home care agency, elderly care in the home. And the first 2 or 3 years of running that company, I was 28 years old at the time. I'm 51 now. And I was stressed, burned out. I was it was the grind, as you call it. Really struggling that way. And I had to figure some things out. I was coming home from work, eating dinner. I had 4 kids at the time. I have 6 kids now.
Oh,
My wife and I, we've been married for 27 years. So I'm pretty proud about that. But I was coming in, I was eating with the family, playing with the kids for a little bit. And then I'd go back to work till like 2 a.m. Right. And I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs can relate with that. And so I figured some things out back then. And with that, clear back in 2005, 2006, put systems and processes in place, try to create a better culture. I just pulled a lot of different concepts together back then. And even, in that journey during that time, I was fascinated with well-being. I was fascinated with how do I get to my own freedoms? I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan's work, strategic coach. Yeah, he's my coach now.
Okay.
I love Dan. And he talks about the 4 freedoms: freedom of time, money, relationships, and purpose. And even back then, I was wanting to get into all those and experience them, but I didn't know the path or how. So when I exited that company and sold it, started another company, had this burning idea of data in the home care industry and creating a performance benchmarking and data company, which I did, called Home Care Pulse. And had a great success and grew that. But you think I would have learned my lesson about that grind, right? And I didn't really learn my lesson. So about 2015, I was overweight. I wasn't happy. I had some financial success, but a lot of the other things weren't aligned. I was living what I call in the book, the lie of the either or. I thought that as long as I grinded it out professionally, then my personal well-being would catch up. And that's really never the case. And so I thought either I had to thrive professionally or I had to thrive personally, but I couldn't have both. That's the lie of the either or. And I started making changes later in 2015, 2016. I went all in a new passion, cycling. I started getting into biking and started investing in my own well-being. And if you look at our growth as a company in 2016, when I really started investing in myself, started letting go, allowing my team members to thrive, that's also the year we implemented EOS, entrepreneurial operating
Yeah,
system in the
Gino Wickman.
business. Yeah, Gino Wickman, friend of mine. And we just started having this exponential growth after that. Now, you talk to my people, my leadership team back then, they'll tell you it really started when Aaron started letting go, focusing on our culture, focusing on myself as a leader. I started living into my core values, living into what I call my guiding truths. And that's when the growth really happened. And from
Amazing.
there,
Not
I,
shocking
I,
though, is it? Once you look back
yeah,
at it, like, duh,
no,
no kidding, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it was accelerated growth. Like by 2018, I'd stepped down as CEO. I continued to be the visionary. I later on went through the positive psychology program at UPenn, #1 program in the world for that, because I wanted to learn why some entrepreneurs thrive and why some don't. And that was my whole reason to go into the program, is to help entrepreneurs. That's afterwards I launched the book. I didn't really think I was going to write a book from it, but after going through the program, I was like, I want to share this information with others. But it was one of those things where I thought it would be a little bit slower as far as my acceleration and my own thriving and well-being, and it wasn't. It was accelerated because once I started and I got it, then those changes happened fairly quickly,
Yeah.
which was, pretty phenomenal. I've done the 200-mile bike race 4 times now since
Wow.
that 2016.
It's
I'm going to
impressive.
do it again this year, and that's from Logan, Utah, to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It's
Oh,
just
wow.
over 200 miles over
Sounds
4
like it's
mountain
uphill.
ranges. It is. It's a lot of hill
Sounds straight
climbing.
uphill.
But that's because, I can, and I've created those freedoms for myself, and I want to help other entrepreneurs do the same. 2018, I took a 7-week sabbatical that I never thought I could take, where I just left my computer at the office, didn't check in at all for 7 weeks. That was just 2 years after I started this journey that I could take that. So anyway, it's something and I'm really passionate about now, is helping others accelerate that growth, especially in the in-home care space. Is
Yeah.
where I play. So
Well, we align well together. You talked about being the visionary. You may not know this, but my firm is called Visionary Wealth Advisors. So
yeah,
that
I
was a
saw
good
that.
word,
Yeah,
good word. And then
yeah,
you
yeah.
see on the mic here, the F greater than P. That's helping people achieve a future greater than your past. And that's our firm's mission. It's my
Mm,
personal mission.
I love
And I
that.
align with what you're saying here. That's what you're out to do, right? That's what we help our
Yeah,
clients do, our investment, wealth management clients, our coaching clients. All of that stuff is that's what people want, right? Never do
yeah,
I give a
yeah,
talk and say who wants a future greater in their past, and that nobody doesn't raise their hand in the room, right? Everybody raises their hand, and so
yeah,
that's what you're doing, and I love that. But when you think about, you talked about just a minute ago, letting go, right? That you're not the guy, right? The man with the
yeah.
title. You're still the guy, but the guy with the title. How hard was that for you? Put that hat back on when you were the CEO. Now you're quote unquote, I like to say stepping away versus stepping
Yeah,
down, right?
yeah,
There's a different
yeah.
connotation there, but I think it's hard. It's hard, right? As a
It is
leader of my
hard.
organization, I know that the more employees we have, the less that's on your plate. Early on in my career, it's like, wait a second, I need to do this, this, and this, and this. How hard was that for you to let go?
It was really hard leading up to it. I never, even in 2017, I never thought that was really going to all come together. But I had to, part of my letting go is to decide what I really wanted in life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really wanted more than anything was more time. As much as I wanted financial freedom, I wanted more time. And as long as I was the man, because I was speaking all over the country, we owned the data for the in-home care space. We had the benchmarking study for the industry. We had all this information, and so I was being asked to speak constantly and turning opportunities down left and right because everyone wanted us and wanted the data, and they wanted Aaron because I was the CEO of that company, and that's what they wanted. And I had to make a decision of what I wanted. And as long as I was the man, right, for the company, um, that time would never be mine. Like I just didn't have the bandwidth or the time. So once I decided what I wanted, I started delegating speaking opportunities. to my COO, Eric, and others who are great speakers who had the ability. I just needed to let go and let them have that opportunity, which allowed them to grow.
Right.
Right. And once I decided what I wanted and I started letting that go over about 12 to 18 months, it just became freeing for me to where I started getting kind of fading into the background while others were elevating, forward. And yeah, by fall of 2018, I was like, it's really moving forward. In fact, Eric, my COO and integrator, he calls it where I was confident in their abilities at that point in 2018, after a couple years of implementing EOS and implementing all these best practices, pursuing my own passion, that I had total confidence in my leadership team, but we hadn't yet tested the competence. And so that 7-week sabbatical was that test of their competence. Yeah. Could they do it without me? And when I came back, they had grown. They had accomplished things I didn't even ask them to accomplish. And that was a test to say, you know what, this can run without me and I can step in the background. And that was, letting go of your ego is another thing I had to do. I had to say, you know what, I no longer need to be that guy.
Yep.
And if you ever want to exit a company, I'm sure you teach your clients this. If you want to maximize your exit, most buyers don't want that founder to stay on board for the long term, right? They want to buy a company that runs without them, and you can maximize your exit by doing that. And that's what happened. I maximized my exit because I was no longer that guy.
I love it.
So,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, it's great, man. And I think it takes a lot of transparency, vulnerability, humbleness, right, to be able to do that stuff. And so congrats to you on doing that. So when you think about no miss items, I love chatting with this about people. Like, what are some of the things, if I followed you around with these cameras we're both using here and every single day, and I know you're going to say, exercise is definitely part of that, but what are some items that are kind of, not the big ones that we would think about. That no miss. We know Aaron is doing that day in and day out.
Yeah. I'm a spiritual person, and I'm not shy about saying that. Prayer is something I focus on every morning.
Yep.
I have really gotten to meditation lately. In fact, I do meditation first because it helps open my mind a little bit more to be more prayerful. And so those are the two things that I really love. I went in July of this last year. I actually did a 2.5-day meditation retreat in Boone, North Carolina, at the
home of Luke Combs,
Art of Living Center. What's that?
So I think that's the home of Luke Combs. I'm a big country music guy.
Yeah.
Luke Combs is from there, I think.
Right. I think you're right. I don't know if he's been to the center, but it's the Art of Living Center. I shout there. I'm a big fan. And so 2.5 days, 3 days, I learned this meditation called sky meditation. And I think it's the entrepreneur's meditation because it's a breathing meditation that really helps me focuses my energy, gets me to be a little bit more still, but allows my thoughts to come in and out. I'm not a big fan. I can't sit still in meditations where I'm trying to get rid of all my thoughts. That's almost impossible for me. So but this kind helps, bring it in. So meditation has been a big thing, especially this last year, really got all into it. Journaling. I call them in the book, I call them deep thrive sessions. I have 2 or 3 of these a week. Every day, no, it's a little bit too much every day, but my deep thrive sessions are meditation, prayer, and journaling, and then creativity. It's one of the laws. It's the second law in my book. Every entrepreneur, in order to invest in their well-being, they've got to take time to create. And so my deep thrive sessions are all about creativity. So I start off with those things, and then I spend 45 minutes to an hour creating, maybe it's an idea or concept. Maybe I'm curious about something that I want to start looking more into, but it's this kind of creation period, or I'm learning something new. And I try to kind of go all in with that. As you can see behind me, I'm a big learner too. So that's one thing that I do. I don't know if you ever read the book, The Slight Edge. He talks about 10 pages a day. Yeah.
I have. Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
funny because I connected with that book. So I've been doing 10 pages a day since 2016. So
Yeah.
8 years. It's like,
Wow.
I'm tired of being this guy that, I'm sure like you've got 1,000 books back there. And I used to be the king of I'd read 30 or 40 pages and then it would sit on my nightstand and then it would go in a drawer. Then it would go on the bookshelf somewhere else. And I'm like, you know what? This is stupid. Go read a book.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big, huge proponent of believing in 10 pages per day.
10 pages
is
a day. I've been doing it about the same amount of time. That's about
awesome.
when I came into that. And finding a book that you can, by doing that, you can at least finish a book a month, right?
Yeah.
So that's been a little bit of a secret sauce. Yeah.
Well, anybody that listens to this podcast knows that I'm dialed in on that because you basically just mentioned all the things that I talk about every time. Is meditation changed my life with anxiety and so on. So it was a game changer. Still practice it to this day. My kids understand meditation. I mean, it's a big deal in our family.
You and I need to hang out more, Brett.
No kidding, right?
We've got a lot
in common here. I got my own journal, plug intended, right here. You can get that on Amazon, Achieving a Future Greater Than Your Past, and it's basically it's a 90-day journal, and it's got all sorts of pre-work into it. It's got post 90-day work, and my favorite exercise in it is the gratitude worksheet. And I think we take a lot of pictures as human beings, at least I do, and I ask my kids, but we never go back and look at those pictures, and we never do anything with them. So every 90 days, I go through every picture that I've taken in the last 90 days. And I write it down in this journal of exactly what I did. So your name will actually be in this journal because I'll write down every person that gave of their time to be on the podcast, right? And then I'll think about that person. And then I'll take the pictures of, hey, this is my wife and I at dinner tonight for Valentine's Day, right? And I'll look back at that picture and remember that dinner. And it may sound cheesy for people listening, but it's not, man. It's just one of those things to look back and be thankful about all the things that we've just done, no matter how big or how little, right? Just a dinner at a normal restaurant here in O'Fallon. I will look back and think about that night. I do that once a quarter, right? The last day of every quarter. And
positive psychology, we call it positive intervention. That's a great positive intervention once a quarter. So I'm gonna order your journal.
Hey, thanks, my man.
Yeah.
And
I love new journals. I love new concepts like that.
Yeah, it's 22 years of work right into one thing. And there's a daily planner that I do Monday through Friday. And then at the end of the week, it's a weekly scorecard where you'll look about the things that you learned about yourself this week and your biggest awareness, your gratitude, all this stuff. And then there's a Sunday planning worksheet that every Sunday you got to get prepared for the week and visualize and think about what the things are that you want to do. But this isn't about me. This is about you. Let's talk about the science behind why most successful entrepreneurs are the happiest and why it's important for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot. If you look at the entrepreneurs as a whole, they aren't necessarily the happiest, right? Is that they're, especially early on in their journey, they don't figure out early on about they're just in their business fighting fires, but the responsibility as entrepreneurs that we possess, the livelihood of others that we employ, all of that plays into our well-being. But the real successful ones, the ones that have figured it out, they have figured out that one, they have to get clear on what they want and be okay and not apologize for what they want. That's something I've learned from Dan Sullivan again, as far as like, don't ever apologize for wanting what you want, is what he calls it, And successful entrepreneurs are not apologetic about that. They're like, this is what I want. This is what I want out of life. In the book, I call it your guiding truths. Like, establish your guiding truths. Like, for example, my first guiding truth is my mind is at peace. Like, for me, if I have a peaceful mind, I'm making good choices and so forth. I have another one that's that my ventures create freedoms. I'm Christian. I have one that's my heart belongs to Christ. I have another one that says my family receives of my time. And all these guiding truths kind of are my direction. It actually, when I create a new company and I want to establish core values in that company, I start with my guiding truths and what's really important to me as the entrepreneur. And once you get clear on that, then the second, and this is the second law. So clarity is the first law. Creation's the second law, is that if you can spend every week carving out the time to create, it's amazing what that does for your well-being. And real successful entrepreneurs carve out time. The ones that are challenged, the entrepreneurs that are struggling, I believe, if you look at their calendar, it's just all over the place, right? There's no rhyme or math to it. It's just they are at everyone's whim.
Can I interrupt real quick? I'm laughing
Yeah,
here, not
please.
at you. I'm laughing because one of us two was late for this podcast. We'll be very transparent. And it wasn't you, right? It was this guy. And it was funny. And I told you I was late. There's bad traffic, all real reasons. But it's funny. I had this discussion with my wife on the phone. And I said, look, I hate living like this, where I had to get from one thing to the other. Because I spent the first 15 years of my life doing that, right?
Yeah.
I had pride, like it was a badge of honor, right? Like, oh, every hour on the hour, I'm slammed and I'm busy and I'm this, I'm that. And man, when I got away from that, for those listening, and put some fluff into my calendar, you're more present, right? You're not running late to things. I'm more engaged in the meeting with the client or whoever I'm with, because I don't have to worry about, oh, shoot, I got 19 minutes to wrap this up, right?
Yeah.
I hate it. And so it's funny that you're saying that now. Did you experience that at all in your rat race days? Of just, the badge of honor?
I had no rhyme or reason to where I didn't block out things to say, this is where I'm not going to take appointments. I didn't have, and it was me in charge of my own calendar, which for a visionary, I always recommend, if you can do it as an entrepreneur and have an assistant, you've communicated, I know, with Megan, my assistant, who really knows when to block out my calendar. When I learned how to block out my time, you'll rarely see me, or I'll rarely have an appointment in the mornings, to be honest with you.
Same.
Is that my mornings are typically blocked out, except on Mondays. I start my meetings on Mondays at 10:30, but I still have a pretty good chunk of time right before that.
Yeah.
But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, mornings are blocked out. I try to push all my appointments. There are rare exceptions, but I push all my appointments in the afternoons. Like you're saying, buffer time between appointments, at least 15 minutes. And if I'm traveling, and I'm with you, it doesn't, 80% of the time it works. There's those times where appointments run long or whatever it might be, but at least it works. And Fridays are my free days. Like this Friday, no appointments. I use them as my clarity breaks. That's an EOS term. But also deep thrive sessions, which is more my personal deep dive into my own personal well-being. But Fridays, they're rarely ever do I have an appointment. I think this Friday I do have a dental appointment. It's all personal stuff.
Yeah.
That I try to push on Fridays. And so it's it has done more for me to be able to just create that time and space for myself. And that creative mode, those successful entrepreneurs, when you ask about what is the code to a successful entrepreneur, I think probably more than anything is that opportunity to create their future, their future best selves, in those periods of time. So
talk about that creative side more of, I call it strategic think time. So every Wednesday from, usually from 1 to 2:30 is on my calendar. And it's one of those meetings, it's the most important meeting of my week. So if it gets booked over, which it rarely does, but if it does, like today, then you move it, right? You move it somewhere in the week. I reschedule that time with myself, where it's me, a journal, an ink pen, and that's it. So for you, talk about that creation time. Like, what are you doing? What are you asking yourself? What are you trying to create? Because people that don't do it, I always talk about this, they're like, well, what in the hell do you do? I tried it, and it's like 90 minutes. I just sat there and didn't even know what to do, right? So what advice would you have for those people?
So that's how you have to start. You have to start somewhere. If it's 30 minutes, if it's an hour, right? Block that time out to where it's your most important appointment. I did this back when I was CEO of that company, Home Care Pulse, and I started small, and it was a couple hours a week. But at the end of that creative period, that, again, EOS would call it clarity break. Some people call it, there's a term called keystone period, whatever you call it. It's your time to go kind of all in on an idea, a curiosity, something that you want to dive a little bit deeper in. Maybe you're even looking at your bench, your team members, what, trainings, things you need to create that way, whatever it might be, business related, blocking out that time. And you can ask my team this, and they'll verify this is what I did over time, is I started working to 2 hours, to 4 hours. until on every Tuesday for the last year that I was CEO and visionary of that company, I blocked out the entire day, every Tuesday. I would leave the office and I would go, we have a campus close by, and I was working on things where I wasn't in my email. I was completely out of my email. The only person who was allowed to communicate with me during that block of time was my COO, Eric. And often it was me throwing an idea at him based upon what I was creating, and saying, "Hey, what do you think about this?" But if there was an emergency, he could call me, and that was certainly okay. Rarely did that ever happen, but you work into something like that, and that requires complete trust with your team to be able to do that. And it's no exaggeration. I was literally taking a full day to go all in my creativity. That's my unique ability as well. That's another strategic coach term, but my unique ability is that creation, like problem solving. I would go into those creative periods with 5 or 6 things that I would say, this is what I want the outcome to be. Sometimes just one thing that I wanted to create. And you look at the products and the services that came from that one day all in as the visionary. Our growth was exponential because of that, products that were creating millions of dollars of revenue based upon the fact that I could have that time and space to do so. Now, if you could do 2 hours a week, that's better than nothing. And the fact is, most entrepreneurs don't give any time to it. And so I'm just saying, you can go extreme like I did. And I would say I'm definitely, that was an exception to most. But 2 hours a week would be amazing for most people.
Yeah. It's incredible.
And
it's a hard discipline to create and do, I think. It's easy to cancel yourself, isn't it? But I agree. Some of my best
self-discipline.
Yeah. But you're right.
You're not
my most profitable
on
ideas
news sites. Come
from that time.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, if you do it, make sure you go in with intention. Otherwise, you're going to be browsing the internet for half the day.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said mine's an ink pen and a journal and me.
Yeah.
It's turn off the technology. So,
yeah.
You mentioned earlier about the either or. I had a guy who was more of a mentor when I started in my early 20s. And I was probably 22, 23 when he said this. And he said, focus on the abundance of the and versus the tyranny of the or. Right. So, tell my kids that all the time, right? It's not this or that in your life. It's this and this. If you want to work and travel, you can do that. If you want to work hard and go home early, you can do that, right? Yeah. So when you hear that, how do you shatter that myth that it's an either or type thing?
Yeah. How to best answer this? Probably best to answer it in, just in an example is that when I was really grinding it out as an entrepreneur, 2015 is a good example, is that I was on the or side of it, as I was saying, how can I leave my business right now and not be in it and also exercise, right? Is that I just felt like that I just didn't have time for exercise. I didn't have time to even be home with my family as much as I probably should have been back then. Is that I felt like I had to grind it out because my team was depending on me and my customers were depending on me. And therefore that other stuff could wait. Well, I was my own problem in my company is because I was living the or side of that is that I was getting in the way of growth. You can't scale a company like that. If it's depending on you and your knowledge and your abilities and that I can do it better than anyone else, therefore I have to be in my business more than anybody else. When I was able to step back and say, the best way to scale this company and to transform this company is for me to get out of the way.
Yep.
That's why I stepped down in 2018 as CEO, as I'm like, this is now growing. And we're getting into this kind of hockey stick growth. If I don't get out of the way, I'm going to continue to be the problem in the company.
Yeah.
And so I had more capable people on the marketing and sales side that could grow it exponentially. and partners who could. And I knew what I was good at. And I had already built this company to where I'm like, you know what? I need to step out of the way. And so that's when I stopped living that lie and said, okay, I can't scale this way. That's when everything changed for me.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. The where my mind goes there is I talk about your focus 90, and it's your 90-day goal, which is that's not a Brett Gilliland original, right? So your 90-day goal, but focus 90 is spending the first 90 minutes of every day on those 3 or 4 or 5 things that are going to move the needle in your life, whether that's your faith. I talk about F to the 6 power: faith, family, fitness, fun, firm, and finances, right? So try to think of it in that F to the 6 power, your focus 90 to those listeners. What are the things you want to do? And I know it's not a perfect world, and some people have to be at a job at a certain time and, or they're going to be fired, right? But for those that have flexibility and freedom, for me, or get up earlier, is that focus 90, right? What are those things that are going to move the needle? And then it also leads into your ideal day. So let's kind of break down your day, if you don't mind sharing. Yeah. What does that look like, right? From I get up here, I go to bed here, everything in between. Kind of give us some of the highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a 5 a.m.er. That's when at 5 a.m.
Bless you. Tip of the cap. I can't do it.
Yeah. There are days, weekends, I'm not a 5. I don't get up at 5 a.m. I typically, because I'm usually up later with teenagers. So I still have two teenagers at home. So, but I go to bed earlier though, too. So 9 a.m. is something that I've been doing a lot this last year.
So you go to bed at 9 p.m. every night?
9 p.m. Yeah. Sorry. 9 p.m.
Yeah.
9 p.m. I'm winding down about 8:30. And my kids, my wife comes to bed. We're trying to get in sync with each other, right? Where she's usually 9:30, 9:45 is when she finds her way. But I'm just finding that 8 hours of sleep at 51 years old is pretty important to me.
Yeah.
So
see, lucky I'm still getting home from like right now a soccer game or basketball or volleyball. I'm getting home at like 8:30 at night. I'm like wired and still got to get some. I got a 9-year-old, so I think it's tough. But that's why I asked that question, man. I think it's important for people to hear other successful people, their calendars.
Yeah, and it's not every morning. Like I'm with you. Is like my son's in basketball. Now, fortunately, at his age right now, his basketball games are earlier, like 6 p.m. And so I'm able to get home a lot of times. But when it's not working totally in sync, then you have to give yourself. I'm more set on the 8 hours of sleep than I am on when I wake up.
Yeah.
So if I get to bed at 10, I'm going to set my alarm for 6.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? That's actually more important to me right now because I've done the research on it. I think that's what I need. Some people need 6 hours. I need 8. I need 8 hours of sleep, and then I'm at the gym 3 to 4 times a week. And then during the winter, I do the bike trainer for my cycling. Yeah. And so my wife and I do quite a bit of that. And so I'm a 5 to 6 days a week on exercise. So 3 to 4 days cardio. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays are usually my cardio, and then gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Got it.
For my gym times.
And that's where you're doing weights and kind of different
weight, strength. I've really become a fan of strength and protein and getting all that.
Seeing more and more come out on that.
Yeah.
How important it is for us as we age to stay strong, right? That's I follow oh my gosh. He talks about this being a centurion, drawing a blank on Peter Attia. And you think about like I want to play golf on my 100th birthday. That's my goal. Yeah. And so but you think about that flexibility, mobility, and strength is critically important right now.
It is. Yeah. And I feel I'm in better health than I was 10 years ago. I really believe that, and that's a good feeling. And that's always been really important to me. I start my workday. So I do like deep thrive sessions sometimes, 2 or 3 days a week where I'm doing the meditation. I do meditation every day though. That's one thing I try not to skip on, in my prayer. And then, the 10 pages is part of that. I usually am starting my work week my work day about 8:15.
Okay.
Is when I kind of launch into my day. That also gives me an opportunity to be with the kids in the morning.
Yeah.
When possible. So
I love it. I love it.
That's it. Yeah.
How many fears you've ever put in your mind? Right? Mind's a dangerous place, isn't it? And how many of the fears you've ever put in your mind have actually blown up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
Can't think of a single one, to be honest with you. It's like, yeah.
I laugh. It literally every time. It's like the person kind of pauses, looks away, and they're always like, "Yeah, never." Yeah, but we're all guilty of it, right? Or am I the only one, right? Maybe everybody's like, "Shut up and stop asking that question." But we put in our minds like these things, right, that are going to happen, and they don't. They just don't happen.
Yeah.
What do you say about that?
Well, we blow it up, right? And it's we ruminate. That's a psychology. We talked a lot about rumination, right? Where we just kind of go over the worst case scenarios in our mind, and that can paralyze us, from even taking action that we need to be taking. And I would imagine that, of course, there's situations that turn out worse than we thought they would, that we weren't planning on. I mean, that's life. I personally can't think of one that I actually knew was going to happen. I usually blew it up in my mind that the outcome was going to be worse than really took. But there's always those things that come from left field that just surprise us in life. When someone close to us dies, I mean, obviously we don't expect that, but in business especially, I have found it to be the case that I'm completely guilty of this, of blowing things up bigger than they really needed to be, and it paralyzed my ability to make good, solid, clear decisions, and move forward.
So what's the thing right now that occupies your brain? So you think about the future and you think about the things. I'm sure there's a laundry list of stuff that you want to accomplish and the impact you want to make. Is there a constant theme of a need out there in the world that you're trying to fix and fill that gap?
Yeah, and I've kind of mentioned it, and that's what the book is about, is to help people live what Aristotle called the good life. And my target audience are entrepreneurs, and helping entrepreneurs live the good life. My focus, my business, where I generate my living from, is in the in-home care space. So in-home care entrepreneurs. But I wanted this book to be about, because everything in my industry is compounded outside of the industry as well, as there's still the same issues with entrepreneurs. And so if I can help combine positive psychology with entrepreneurial well-being, and how can I help them thrive, that's really what those 8 laws are about in the book. And so that's what I feel called to do right now. And when you feel called to do something, I talk about it in the book, is that's the 5th level of grit. Curiosity, interest, practice, which is the 3rd level. 4th level is passion. That's where a lot of entrepreneurs stop. But when you feel called to do something, your ability to persevere and that staying power is so much more deeper, right? It's just.
Can you repeat all those again? Number 1 was
yeah. It's 5 levels of grit, and it starts with curiosity. Like when we're first curious about something, we start doing research or whatever. Interest is now we're going deeper. We're actually making even maybe some investments into what we want to do. The practice phase is the phase that a lot of people, especially younger entrepreneurs, want to skip. They think the passion will just come and just kind of fall in their laps, when they're not really like practicing what they're really wanting to do and doing it long enough. So practice is the 3rd phase. The 4th phase is passion. So once you get to the passionate phase, then your grit, you have that staying power. It's just, it's about what's important to you as an entrepreneur. What are you passionate about? But the 5th phase is one that a lot of people overlook, and that's the calling phase. And the calling phase it includes passion, like what you want as an entrepreneur. But the calling phase is, how can I make an impact on others? Where am I going to, what do I want to do with this, whatever that is? And for me, it's helping entrepreneurs figure out how to thrive and to invest in their own personal well-being while their company's exponentially growing, at the same time, and find those financial freedoms that you're really good about doing, through the exercising of these 8 laws that I talk about. That's what I feel called to do,
I love
and
that.
that's my staying power right now, as I'm just super passionate about it.
Yeah, that calling is massive. And I mean, I think for me, when I found that, our mission, achieving a future greater than your past, it is a calling. I mean, what we get to do
Yeah.
and who we get to serve every day, our clients, and, we're helping them with their biggest goals of their life, and
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of doing that for 22 years. It's pretty freaking amazing, man. And,
Yeah.
but I think it is, and it's hard. I think, especially for younger folks, you don't know that you may have passion, but that calling, I think it takes a while to find it. Don't you?
It does. It does. It does. When I first got in the in-home care space, I didn't I got to the passion, but I didn't feel called for a while. It was just
Yeah.
more, this is what I like doing this. I'm making money at it. And I'm passionate. I feel like I'm passionate about it. But the thing about passion is that you can get distracted
Yes.
with other types of passions. You could say, oh, someone might come to you and say, hey, let's collaborate on this. And it might be taking you in a totally different direction that you've been doing maybe for the last 5 years. But when you're called, when someone comes with you to an opportunity that could distract you from your calling, you're more likely not to pursue. You're more likely to say, nope, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm called to do. I'm going to stay in this direction.
Well, I think it
It's that
helps you with
staying
the
power.
word no, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if
it
it's
does.
not going to move the needle, for me, it was learning over the years on how to say no. You still want to say
Yeah.
yes, be abundant with time and all that kind of stuff. But at
Yeah.
the same time, we gotta guard that time, don't we?
Yeah, we absolutely do. Essentialism, right? By Greg
Yeah,
McKeown. I love
absolutely.
that book.
That's a
Yeah.
great book. Great book.
Yeah.
So talk about your book. I mean, this thing's coming out
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that'd be
So
the
on to
week. We already know
Thrive.
what podcast is coming out next week. So by the time you're listening to this, the book is out. Go get it.
Yes.
You can tell by Aaron right now. It's going to be a great book.
Yeah, it's kind of my opus, I guess, in a sense. I've been working on it for over a year now. And I talk about the 8 laws in the book, and the 8 laws accelerate financial freedom in the sense that if you can focus on the good life, which are these 8 laws, in creating the good life for yourself, as well as your company and your culture, and we talk about, there's certainly business concepts interwoven throughout the book. And I use the science of positive psychology in the book, but a lot of stories. Like you can only do so much with science, right? Is that we need to tell the personal stories of the examples. It's a really great read. I've gotten a lot of great feedback. Brian Tracy wrote the introduction to
Wow.
the book. So
Nice work
Brian,
on that one.
yeah, Brian, he just turned 80. And
Oh, wow.
I used to listen to Brian's audio cassette tapes back when I
Yeah.
was first starting as an entrepreneur, Psychology of Achievement. So I feel like this is kind of full circle to have him kind of endorse the book.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's 8 laws, clarity. So they are clarity, creation or create, grit, connections, faith, habits, vigor, and agency as an entrepreneur, like taking ownership, accountability, all that stuff. And imagine there's a lot to that one. That's what I call the keystone law of all 8 of them, is the agency law. But I just go into each one of those and say, okay, if you can really kind of accelerate your growth personally and professionally by focusing on these 8 laws.
I love it.
Yeah.
And everybody can get it, I'm assuming, everywhere. Get it on
everywhere, especially Amazon. It's where it's going to first be offered. I mentioned to you earlier that the audio book, we had a little bit, it's one of those uncertainties I talked about in the book. We had a little snafu. And so the audio book's going to be released mid-March.
Okay. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, we will put all this in the show notes for sure. So last few questions here. I heard this. I can't remember where I heard it, but I've really connected with this thought, and I want to get your feedback on it. But is making decisions based on knowledge, not on emotion, right? So make your decisions based on knowledge, not on emotion. So when you hear that, what comes to mind for you?
Wow, that is a loaded question. I've never been asked that before, Brett. That's a great
It's a great.
question.
I so connected with it, man. And for me, I'll give you some time. I'll buy you some time to think about it, but you
Yeah,
probably don't
yeah,
need
yeah,
to. But for me, it's exercise, right? That's the
yeah,
easiest one that I think a lot of us struggle with. And, I know you do
yeah.
a good job with it. I do a pretty good job with it.
Hmm.
Always could be better, maybe not. But it's really helped me make my decision to go to my gym at home and work out and do the things I need to do, based it on knowledge, not how I'm feeling in the moment.
Yeah, yeah,
That emotion.
yeah. That's powerful. I could certainly relate with that one.
Hmm.
Because emotions. If I at the decisions that I've made over my 22 years as an entrepreneur, and those decisions that I made emotionally, the
Yeah.
outcomes weren't as good. They
Right.
were they they weren't as in fact, I could think of one in particular. I, uh, I went to a seminar, and some of these seminars, there's a lot of emotions, right? You're getting this kind of pumped up and so forth, and I came out of that with an idea, like an emotional idea of how we could change the industry and helping seniors find in-home care, and I could create this website, and anyway, long story short is it was a gut reaction of we needed to do this, and I was overlooking some of the knowledge that my team was giving me and feeding me, that this could step on the toes of our current customers. We had large customers, and what we ended up doing is launching a website that competed with our customers' websites from an SEO standpoint, in a nutshell. It was
Mm-hmm.
an emotional decision on my part, and I lived off that emotion for 2 or 3 months as we were kind of building this thing out. And a lot of money, a lot of investment, and we ended up not even moving forward fully with the whole concept, and, that was an emotional decision, and it wasn't a good decision. So, I'd say that, in most cases now I understand that in some cases as a, entrepreneur or even as a father, you have to make some emotional decisions. But I don't know if the outcome's ever as good as if you have the knowledge first. I mean,
Yeah.
I just can't think of a situation where that would where an emotional decision without the knowledge would be a great decision.
Yeah. Yeah. What it's helped me with is I love talking trash, right? If I'm playing
Yeah,
basketball with my buddies
yeah,
or we're golfing or whatever, I love it. And it's all in
yeah,
fun spirit, right? But I've also found with anxiety and through fears to talk trash to those as well. And so
yeah,
that for me, that knowledge versus emotion has really helped
yeah,
me being like, oh, you don't, oh, okay. I see what you're doing here, brain. Like this ain't going to work, right? I'm too smart. I know too much of what you're trying to do to me right now, and it ain't going to work.
mhm,
Right. And
yeah.
it helps me make decisions.
Reactive,
Yeah.
yeah. Emotions are
Yeah.
reactive. Thinking about my kids, you know, how many times have I been emotional in my response to something that they did without having the background,
Yeah.
without having the knowledge. And then later on, I find out that I way overreacted, right?
Yep.
That they did do something that maybe I didn't think they did,
Yeah.
or something positive that they did. So yeah, yeah, that's really that's a really great question. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Aaron, where do our listeners find more of you? Where can we send people to find you?
Yeah. Yeah, so first and foremost, send them to your we created an URL, entrethrive.com. In fact, I think it's entrethrive.com circuit of success forward
Nice.
slash circuit of success.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's the one. It
We'll
should
put
be in the
that. We'll
show
find that
notes.
and put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and what they can do is they can download what's called the Entre Clarity Guide. It's the Entrepreneurial Clarity Guide, and they can figure out their own guiding truths. There's a guide there for their guiding truths, as well as what we call their next breakaway. And I use the term breakaway. It's a biking term to distance themselves from who they are today to their future selves. It's what you're
Yeah.
talking about. And it's just a breakaway tool, um, similar to what they do at the Tour de France, and who do you want to break away with? Who's going to help support you in this breakaway? And so that's the Entre Clarity Guide, and they can
Yeah.
download that. On that same website, entrethrive.com, they can contact us, they can order the book. all of that information is there for
Awesome.
them to get to.
Social media guy?
Yeah. LinkedIn. They find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I love that platform. We post almost every day something that I think is super helpful. Facebook as well, Instagram, we're on there as well. EntreThrive, you can find.
So we can find you.
Both of those. Yeah, 100%. But again,
Awesome.
EntreThrive.com. There's a link to all those socials as well.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. Hang with me here when I hit stop here. But thanks so much for being with me today on the Circuit of Success, man. It was incredible. Love chatting with you.
Yeah, same. Appreciate it.